We're talking MLB trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Giants, uh, whatever. There was a big argument about whether they were going to buy or sell, and they really didn't do either. They made minor moves, but I don't feel that differently about the Giants today as I did prior to the 3 p.m. deadline yesterday. They're just kind of existing.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, right? And the one move they did make felt like, okay, you're saving money.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt a little cheap. And so it's just kind of like, like if you're gonna trade like a guy like the Alex Cobb trade, that doesn't move
Yeah,
any
yeah,
needle
sure,
anywhere.
sure.
Just like the same thing with Paul Blackburn. I mean, he hasn't
Mm-hmm.
pitched most of the season. He's coming off the DL. Like, so yeah, he's been part of the franchise, and you're gonna miss him. But at the same time, he hadn't really been an impact player. I think with Soler thing is like, oh, look at that, you're just trying to save money. Like,
Yeah, or I buy into the Marco Luciano idea that
okay,
they're trying to just open a lineup spot for him, which is fine. But they also didn't commit to. I think if they were committed to selling, and this is why I don't think they were selling necessarily.
yeah,
If they were committed to that, Blake Snell would probably not be on the Giants anymore.
well, that's true.
They could have gotten a haul for him and actually sold this thing, but I think they believe they can still compete or at least contend for that last playoff spot.
Okay.
But this is why we talked about this with Kenny. And I think it was really I think it was really on display throughout the deadline. This is not the Giants just exist. They're just there.
Mm-hmm.
Are they good? Nah. Are they bad? Nah. Are they exciting? Nah. They are the I'm trying to think of like an NBA comparison for the Giants. Just a guy who's they are the like Nick Batum of Major League Baseball.
Or
They're
like
just
the Atlanta Hawks.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't put come on. I'm not putting the Hawks on them. That's crazy.
Okay.
No, but that's it. Like the Hawks, put it this way. Here's why that works. I don't think about the Atlanta Hawks ever.
Yeah.
The context in which I think about the Atlanta Hawks is how they could complete a 3-team Brandon Ingram trade for the Kings.
Okay.
That was the context that I thought with to any extent about the Hawks. I think if you're a Braves fan, I don't think you're probably that concerned with the Giants.
No.
Or if you're pick an American League team, I guess on the East Coast. If you're a Yankees fan, you're probably not that concerned with the Giants.
No.
They are just there. They're floating in the ether. They're the team that won 3 titles and had that incredible run through the early 2010s. And that they're just kind of They won 107 games in a season recently.
Yeah, that's
and they're just I guess. And they just the way they operated at the trade deadline was to me a perfect encapsulation of what they are. They didn't buy, they didn't sell. They made a couple of moves.
They're just kind of even Steven.
They're just there.
Yeah.
And that's the worst place to be as a team. That's the worst thing you can be.
Well, and I was watching the game last night.
Yes.
And I may have had to change the broadcast because you could watch both broadcasts. I may have had to move from one broadcast to the other, whatever. But while I was watching, I was struck by the fact that the A's are bad, but they're so much fun to watch. They're out there ripping 4 home runs, crushing the ball. Like, again, they held on to Brett Rooker. He put a ball so far out into left center. It was like, holy smokes. Like they're fun.
Yeah.
You got Blade almost went into the drink. Like the whole entire feel of the A's is like, hey, we're upstart. We're cool. We're just gonna blast a bunch of home runs. We can't get everybody out all the time, and we may make a bunch of errors, but it's okay. We're at least fun to watch, right? We're at least exciting. And I felt like we come out of the trade deadline, and the A's made 2 moves that could help them in the future. They lost 2 players, one of which was helping them now, one of which may have helped them down the stretch, but you're not going to win anything this year. You're too far behind at this point. And so I was totally fine with their moves, but I also felt like we were watching a Giants team that had their spirit broken. Like, it was like, hey, we might have had a shot if you did anything,
Mhm.
but you didn't. And now we're just kind of blasé the rest of the year. We're just kind of like what you're saying, just floating. We
Yes,
don't
sir.
really care because you don't care. You clearly don't value what's happening on the
Mhm.
field, upper management, ownership. You don't care. So why should we? And they go out there against a team like the A's, who again they made their moves,
Mhm.
but it was like, hey, look at that. Rooker's still here.
Mhm.
We still got a shot. Blade's still here. We still got a shot. We at least have. Let's go have some fun. Let's go
Yeah.
tear this thing up and see if we can make some noise and at least mess with some
Let's
people.
play
And
spoiler, yeah.
yeah, at least destroy like all those people who bet the under on the 57 wins. Like, all right, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yep.
Yeah. So I kind of like I feel like there is this moment with teams where you can either help your team, give them a bump in confidence, give them a shot in the arm,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's not making a move, and sometimes it is making a move. Or you can do what the Giants did and just kind of cash it in and make the rest of the roster feel like you're ambivalent, and so should they be.
Mhm.
And that's kind of it's a tough thing, but the way I thought about it too was like the Sacramento Kings were in this situation twice in the last 2 years with the same exact team,
Mhm.
and they did the same thing both times. But I also feel like one time it was the appropriate thing, and the next time it wasn't.
Mhm.
And I think that that's where, like, a general manager has to be able to read the room.
Mhm.
They have to be able to say, "Hey, look, like, we're winning games and no one expects us to be this good." And then they go on to storm in the second half and win 48 games
Mhm.
2 years ago.
Mhm.
The only move they made at the trade deadline was to trade for Kessler Edwards, and it wasn't even like a salary dump, it was a way to get a second round pick,
Mhm.
right? And so you get to the next year and it's the same team. Their record isn't even that much different.
Almost a just complete rerun of the previous season.
Yeah, but you got to the trade deadline and it felt like, man, this team really needs a move. It really needs a
Mhm.
move in order to take that next step, in order to shake them out of the malaise,
Mhm.
right? Like you're waiting for them to like have this moment where all of a sudden they look like the team they were before fully. So even if the teams look the same, even if their records were similar, they didn't feel the same.
Mhm.
And that's where I think like feel is such a huge part of being a general manager, is part of team building. And you're looking at this thing like, man, I really, really wish you could have done something more than trading for Robin Lopez,
Yeah.
right? And then waiving him before he even like got he didn't even get on a plane.
Yeah.
Like those are those moments where I think you just kind of miss.
Mhm.
And like I think the Kings have not used a trade deadline in any meaningful way except for the Sabonis deal, the one
Mhm.
out of like the 5 years that Monty has been
Yeah.
the general manager. So
And that's not to say that every deadline needs to have a Sabonis deal.
no,
But it was so clear to you and me, everybody in the chatty house, everybody at Golden One Center, anybody who followed the Kings even a
yeah,
little bit. It was so clear at this year's deadline that, like, man, they need just, even if it's a lateral move, they need to change something.
it was like when you make a really good stew and you're like something's missing, and you're sitting there like you don't know what's missing,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea shouldn't be to just plate it. Like
Mm-hmm.
let's go ahead and dish it up, even though it's missing something.
Yeah, this isn't going to be a playoff stew, but
Yeah,
it
it's
might
like
be. Maybe people will like it.
yeah, maybe someone will like it. No, at some point you gotta, add a little salt. You gotta add something
Yeah.
to like try to bring out a different flavor, and that's what I kind of felt like with the Kings. And then, but I'm watching it play out with the Giants and the A's, where one team is like, again, they know they're not good.
Mm-hmm.
They just had a really good month of July, but they know that they're not good.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay because we're building something. The other team is like, man, we are so mid. Can you believe how mid we are? And
Mm-hmm.
we got another 45 games of this
Yeah.
where we're just like putting on the coasters and just like let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like that there's such a weird vibe.
Yeah.
You are a vibes guy, and the vibes being so different. And and again, I thought about the Kings and how the vibes were different than they were the year before,
Mm-hmm.
and how you could have changed vibes, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And how one time it was probably the right move and another time it probably wasn't.
And just for anybody listening, vibe can translate roughly in this case to like team chemistry.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're talking about here. It was really clear that I thought just to bring this back to the Kings momentarily. I thought I'm with you. I thought last offseason for the most part, running it back the way they did was the right move. I saw the theory with adding Chris Duarte. I liked the vision there, where you bring in a defensive-minded guy who can help you out on that end of the floor. Maybe Davion Mitchell takes a little bit of a step, and Keegan Murray takes a little bit of a step. And you saw the vision.
Yeah.
But then by February,
by December,
well, by December, and certainly as the trade deadline approached, they needed to do something. And I'm with you. I thought that was a miss last year. Not that again, not asking them to go do a Sabonis deal. Not even saying PJ Washington or who was the other guy? Daniel Gafford.
Yeah.
Like the Mavericks one, because you and I have gone through that. It's really hard to piece together that deal if you're the Kings. But like any kind of shakeup would have been great. And I'm interested to see if Monty McNair learns from that experience, or if this is just kind of their ethos. If their ethos is a little bit Giantsy, where they put together this team in the preseason, or no, I'm sorry, not in the preseason, during the offseason, and they have an idea for what this team should be. And if it's not what the team is at the deadline, going, okay, well, let's wait it out. Let's see, because we still got a couple of months. We're on the cusp of the playoffs. If a couple of things really turn and go right, then we can make this push. And I think that's what the Giants are doing right now, is looking in there going, well, Blake Snell hasn't been around all year and certainly hadn't been himself all year. Well, now he looks like himself. And Robbie Ray is back. And Robbie Ray wasn't great last night, but he was really good in his first start against the Dodgers. Okay, so now you got Logan Webb, and you got Hayden Birdsong, and now, okay, you see the rotation. Now you just got to kind of mix and match the pieces offensively, and you're going to be good. I do wonder if that's the Kings' approach to this.
No, it very well could be. That's I think when you put together a team, like, you want to feel like you've given it enough of an opportunity.
Yeah, definitely.
But an 82 game season, especially when you have a coaching staff that's looking at every 5 games and trying to win every 5 games, right? They're like, you have the coaching side of it, you have the grand scheme franchise side of it, right? There has to be some sort of conversation, like, all the time about, hey, where's this thing going? Let's check in. Are we at 65% of who we think we can be? Are we at 85%? Like, where are we as a team? And what do we need? How can we change this thing? How can we make this better? And you have to be willing to, I don't think gamble, but you have to be willing to make a move, like, if things aren't right. And if everyone from the outside can see that things aren't right, but you're like, hey, we got, Trey Lyles missed the first 13 games of the season. Once he's back and he's healthy, maybe he'll be right. Yeah, you saw it the whole year. Like, the way the season started, the way the season ended, there was no spike. There was no, like, you had Sabonis basically at a superstar level the entire season. You had Fox that had, he was a little all over the board, but still had a great season. You had Keegan Murray, who had a really rough start and kind of came back and then had a sort of a weak finish. You had Malik Monk, who is a stable factor. There's all of these things that you're watching the whole time. You got to figure out ways to smooth out some of that and wait. And maybe the deals aren't there, but we can't keep saying for year after year after year that, well, the deal wasn't there. Maybe the deal wasn't there. It's like, okay, well, then maybe you need to change what you're looking for in your deal. Because if you can't get what you think you can get with the players that you're offering up, then maybe you need different players. Maybe you need to change the offers that you're making, no matter how difficult that might be. So, yeah, really interesting.
I kind of wonder, because the A's did what the Kings did last year, really, because they're still riding the wave up.
Yeah.
They're still looking at the construct of their roster and the ages and the player control and what the team could look like next year. And they're still on that upward ascension where the Kings were 2 seasons ago. So I love that they stood pat for the most part. Again, they made a couple of minor deals, but the core of what, if this version of the A's is going to make the playoffs, they kept that core intact.
Yeah.
Now, let me rephrase. If this version of the A's is going to make the playoffs at some time in the next couple of years, not this year, but at some time in the next couple of years, they kept that core intact. And honestly, I wonder 2 things. One, was there some kind of mandate for the front office that said, unless you are getting the world for Brent Rooker, do not trade him. Unless you are getting 2 MLB ready all-star potential guys for Mason Miller, do not move him.
Yeah.
Because they are coming to a new city. And are they going to start spending money hand over fist in Sacramento? I don't think so. But there needs to be you got to have something. And so I wonder if there was that kind of mandate, or if it was just David Force, the GM, looking at kind of what we're talking about, going, hey, this team is 4th in the league in home runs, and they're having a great time, and it's not a good team, but it's at least a fun team, and if they could get some outs, they'd be a really good team.
Yeah.
This is a club that we can, for an inexpensive price, move forward with next year and make a couple adjustments in the offseason. Yeah, maybe make a playoff push. I maybe it was just that.
Yeah, I can look at, I mean, we can turn it a million different ways. I just know that when I read sort of like the talking heads after, the grades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they give the A's a losing grade.
B- is not a losing grade.
Well, like
shout out to Sac State. Fingers up.
But ESPN gave them a losing. They put them as part of the losers, right?
Because they didn't trade their dudes.
Yeah, the Giants and the A's, and then they start talking about, well, hey, look, Brett Rooker's almost 30. It's like, okay, but he just got to the bigs. Like, you gambled on a guy who had not been able to figure it out in other spots. He's figured it out. You still have team control for like 3 or 4 more years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why not? Why not give this an opportunity? And last time I checked, this is in baseball. That's your prime.
Mm-hmm.
Like 28 to like 33 is your prime in baseball.
Mm-hmm. Especially for a DH.
Yeah. Why not like live out his prime and have the opportunity to walk into Sutter Health Park, if sell out every game, build some sort of positive momentum for your franchise, which you have zero. You have zero positive momentum at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, outside of guys like us who watch too many games, like, people don't know who, Lawrence Butler is. They don't know who Tyler Soderstrom or Zach Geloff. And they don't care, right? But when it's your team, you're into it. So I just feel like there does come a point where, like, you do need some positivity with this franchise. Like, they're moving, they're relocating, and not relocating once, twice in the next 4 years. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But at the same time, like, I would love to see what Brent Rooker looks like at Sutter Health Field. Can he hit 50 jacks?
Here's the other thing with the A's being deadline losers and getting a B- because they didn't trade Rooker. Teams will want Brent Rooker in the offseason too.
Oh yeah.
He's going to have value.
Yep.
So I wouldn't I don't know. I hope he stays.
Yeah, I hope he does too. And I hope that they actually invest, even if it's a little bit, in what they're doing right now, just so, like, even if it's just like picking up arbitration years and actually like having a guy make a little bit of money. There's no one on this team that makes any money at all right now. And you're looking at me like that's never going to happen. Like, I agree.
Never say never. I'm skeptical.
No, I am.
I hope
too.
so.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I'm not putting it out into the ether that I think the A's are going to suddenly start spending money.
Oh no, and I'm not saying spend big money, but like, for a guy who's a DH and hits home runs, you might be able to keep him in Oakland, Sacramento, Las Vegas, wherever you are, for the next 3 or 4 years. And then there could come a point where you're like, okay, look, we're reaching that point where he's going to need that other contract that we're not going to pay. And maybe you can keep him, maybe you can't. I mean, it kind of feels like the Chris Davis situation, where you got a guy who's hitting home runs through his prime, just crushing, and then there's an expiration date, and you know it.
Yeah.
But I don't. We'll see, man. We'll see. It at least for me, it was watching two teams, one that looked like they're having a good time playing baseball, and somebody didn't just sucker punch them at the deadline, and another who just felt like the inactivity.
Shocking.
Yeah, the inactivity just like wiped out any hope, any joy from the rest of the season. And maybe they'll bounce back. I saw
a Giants fan on Twitter yesterday saying that the Giants aren't a bad offensive team. They're in the top half in all these categories. And then they started listing categories and they were like, they're 12th, 13th, 14th, 14th, 11th. Hey, that's pretty mid, man. That's pretty close to middle of the pack.
Yeah.
If the 49ers ranked 13th in something, I would write that they are middle of the pack in that stat.
Well, that, I mean, even the Kings had the 14th rated defense.
Yeah, top half defense.
But there's a big difference when, 8 teams make the playoffs in each side, and like it's not, there's not talking about play-ins. Like,
yeah,
it's a big difference.